it reminded me watching Purdue of what happens when you play chess with a kid and they end up with nothing left but the king and a bunch of pawns. Like you mentioned, the
Hmm.
size disadvantage. The Edie can't really do much outside of say 8 feet from the hoop. It's not like he's going to take the ball and penetrate from 12 feet out. Like he's there, he's at the rim. You're going to funnel the ball to him, and he's going to reach up like into the peach basket and just drop it in because he doesn't even have to jump to put the ball in the hoop. And if he doesn't kick it back out and find that kind of offense, then they're done. They're cooked. And when you flip it onto the other side of the floor, UConn is like, hey, we've got all our pieces and we're going to maneuver exactly how we want to, right? We're going to be patient and then we're going to just pick you apart because I don't know. And look, this is a common complaint about big men in college basketball who, I've heard it a lot over the last 10, 15 years about certain players, but Zach Edey falls into this category. Like, I that guy just looked soft last night. He looked soft, Joe. He looked like a big man who's, you know, and whether this mattered last night or during their tournament run or not, I don't know. He definitely does not look ready for the next level. That's out of the question.
Yeah.
At least being the same kind of player at the next level that he was in college, and he just didn't look physically ready for the challenge that UConn wanted to throw him. And again, it's just their guards driving to the lane. That's all they were doing. Occasionally, they'd try to funnel it down into Klingon into the post, and he'd take some cracks at it. But it was, I don't want to say it was simple because it was a great job Hurley did of building the game plan the way he did, and he had the right roster in place to do it with. But Edey is not the kind of dominant big man, other than, oh, congratulations, you're 8 inches taller than everybody else, that can take a team to a national title. And that's, I think, that's my big takeaway from this as well. You can go out and get your big man, but he better be ready, willing, and able to play like a big man. And Edey just didn't look like it.
It feels like that's been recognized by a lot of evaluators because it's an awful NBA draft. People are saying that do this for a living, one of the worst that we've seen. And Edie's not a first rounder, according to many. So, what you're talking about, I don't think it's completely outlandish, but also a part of it is getting credit to the other side. Like what
Mm,
happened last night, it's historical stuff.
yeah.
It's and the comp to the other back-to-back champions, which, as you mentioned, it's been so long since we've seen Florida, not comparable. They had no, they did have their entire starting lineup back for that team. It's not comparable. They lost arguably the three best players a season ago, and look at the way they reloaded. And by the way, that was a sharp bet by you. I know some people would look at it that jumped in mid-season in college basketball and say, "Oh yeah, great prediction, picking UConn." People weren't doing it in November and December. I'll remind you that it's not like they
Yeah.
were the standalone favorite all year. They were just kind of sitting there, kind of lurking, and
Especially
it, and
once
it's
Klingon went down.
right. And it took a couple months, and then people like, oh yeah, what if UConn just does it again? I know that never happens in this sport, but what if they do it again? And then before Florida, it was Duke in 92. They had four of their
Mm-hmm.
five starters back. Like, who's to say Hurley can't do this again? Um, so on your point, I have a tough time crushing Edie because he was the only thing they had. And it's like him against all of them. So it's when it's basically 5-on-1 or 1.5 if you want to count Braden Smith. Okay, fine. Yeah, I have a tough time because this team is going to go down. It's not the best we've ever seen. It's not. But it's a new era with NIL and transfer portal and all that. It's completely different. Of the current era of the current state of college basketball, it is the dynasty. It's the best we've seen.
Purdue and Matt Painter, they're 12th on the board right now for next year. It's super early, I get it, but 25-1. What's the takeaway for the Boilers?
It's a missed opportunity. The two-time national player of the year coming into your program, you have a chance to make history here and win the national title, and to not get it done stinks. And I thought Zach Edey went right at Donovan Clingan early in that first half and really set the tone for them. Was playing with a lot of swagger. But part of me wonders if just the workload started to catch up to him a little bit, because he was not coming off the floor. Like, he was playing 40 minutes basically every single night. And I wonder how much that kind of wore him down throughout this tournament. He was so important for them, and he's going to be remembered really fondly. Like, he is one of the coolest basketball stories. Just his story and his rise to the top of the sport is insane. I think he's a first round pick. I don't know if he's a lottery pick, but I think he's going to end up being a first round pick, because just the rim pressure that he puts on you, the rebounding aspect that he has. I think his mobility has improved a lot, and he can help you on that side on both sides of the floor, to be honest. So I think he's a first round pick. And then for Purdue moving forward, it's just kind of more of the same, because Braden Smith can come back. It's Fletcher Lawyer coming back. Trey Kaufman-Wren's going to come back. Camden Heide, you saw that tomahawk put back dunk. A lot of people really like him. They got some big wings coming into that program that they think are going to be pretty good too. So it's going to take a little bit of a step back. They're not going to be the most talented team in the Big Ten next year. I don't think I would pick them to win the league right now, but I don't think that they're a team that's going to be, I don't think they're bottoming out by any means. I think that's a top 25 roster next year that's going to be in the tournament with another chance at the bite of an apple to make a run. I just don't know if they have the national championship upside that they do, that they did this year.
Who are some names to keep an eye out for going into next year, whether they're in the portal and there's a chance they could go someplace? Maybe they end up a place like UConn and give them a legit shot at a three-peat. Maybe they go somewhere else and bring a program back to life. Who are the names, the players that you'll have an eye on going into next season?
Well, it starts and ends with Cooper Flagg, right? One of the top prospects in college basketball, and he's heading to Duke. That's going to be a really, really huge story. But I think retention is going to be very, very important this year. RJ Davis enters this cycle with a stay or go decision. He's not really on NBA draft boards. If he comes back to North Carolina, you're starting to look at the Tar Heels as one of the best teams in college basketball. Kansas, can Hunter Dickinson come back? He's the best villain in college basketball that we've seen. He is not scared. He'll wear ski masks to games. He'll talk to the student section. Like, he'll go on podcasts left and right and say whatever he wants. Like, if he comes back to Kansas, that certainly shapes it as well. Caleb Love has a stay or go decision to make as well with the NBA draft. If he returns to Arizona, that's going to be a national story. Obviously, with John Calipari going to Arkansas, if he pulls all of those Kentucky commits there and he gets to flex his muscles a little bit and say, hey, like, I know Kentucky, like, you think you're big and bad, but all those dudes came to Kentucky because of me, not because of Kentucky. That's going to be a story next year. Him going back to Arkansas, or him going back to Kentucky for that first game, is going to be, boy, that's going to be a treat. So there's a lot of really, really fun storylines shaping up with college basketball heading into this season. Flagg is probably the number one storyline, and he's going to be that next Zion Williamson. Like, Cooper Flagg's playing tonight, got to watch him, and that's going to be really, really cool. And my big takeaway is, let's not get anchored again to those Ken Pom numbers of top 20 offense, top 20 defense. I've been preaching that all year, right? Here's my other thing too. There are some horrific lines from a futures perspective. I have no idea why Gonzaga is 40-1 in certain spots to win the national title next year. Like, they're like the 15th longest odds at certain things. We did our preseason top 25 this morning. They're number 2 for us. So second best team in college basketball. That's a really big angle to watch there. Also, Florida really loading up in NIL. They're going to have a bunch of money to spend in the portal and a bunch of great opportunities to replace high-level talent if they get Walter Clayton back. That number, I think it's 55-1 at some shops to win the national title, is not going to be there in a couple weeks if they do what they think they're going to be able to do in the transfer portal.
John Calipari on the move, which opens up one of the bluest of blue blood spots in Lexington. You just tweeted the numbers out, Joe. Scott Drew is the favorite. Isaac Trotter told us that a couple minutes ago, but there are some really interesting names out there aside from his.
Yeah, Billy Donovan. It's been talked about a lot, that Florida team, because that's the last time we saw team go back to back with what UConn accomplished last night. Billy Donovan's the second favorite. It's a close second favorite. Going back to the SEC, he's plus 200. Some Bulls fans might be like, all right, a fresh start again. We need something to change here. Even though he said, he didn't say it, but he kept saying, yeah, laughed it off, talked to my wife. It felt like Dan Hurley was saying, hell no, that's laughable that I would go to Kentucky at this point after winning back-to-back championships. But there's got to be a new paycheck. Did he get a new contract after last year?
I don't know.
The money that's going to get thrown out, man, I'd imagine he gets whatever the hell he wants. Plus 350, Dan Hurley, third favorite. So Drew, Donovan, Hurley, and then it drops off a little bit. So those guys are viewed as the top three. I just think these are interesting conversations, some of the names that are thrown out there. 10-1, there's Mark Pope. Group of guys at 20. Rick Pitino, Richard Pitino, Chris Beard. That's probably what I would do. Sean Miller, Otzelberger, Will Wade, busted for cheating and then, made the tournament at a lower level school this year. Other names, a little past 20-1, like Bruce Pearl, there are odds on him. Nate Oates sent out a press release yesterday, not happening, but, he could change his mind. 25-1. Shaka Smart 25-1, Jay Wright 25-1. Oh, Jamie Dixon sighting at 33
Oh, come
on. Tommy Lloyd 33-1. Jake, it says Brad Under. I am assuming it's Brad Underwood 33-1. This one we were talking about during the break. This talking about personalities. What's good for college basketball? Anthony Hardaway 33-1.
God. I mean, he's going to get a completely. I mean, he's good for one eye-popping recruit every year at Memphis. The problem is they're also somewhat unreliable recruits because it's Memphis. And if he went, man, Penny in Lexington with that machine behind him, he might have a title in 3 years. I mean,
But isn't it what you were upset about with Coach Cal? He can recruit, can't coach, bad in-game coach. Wouldn't a lot of the same stuff be said?
Probably. Which is also why, it's a name and it would mean a very short runway. Like I just said, I wouldn't be surprised if he won a title in 3 years. At Kentucky, they would say, you have to win us a title in 3 years or at least get to a Final Four. Like their standards are now somewhat unrealistic.